Long ago, in a time before written words and stone cities, human beings lived close to the earth, bound to the rhythms of the sun, the moon, and the turning seasons. Winter was the harshest teacher of all. When the winds howled like wild spirits across the plains, and snow buried the land in silence, the cold could seep into bones and steal away life itself. To survive those endless nights, our ancestors learned to seek shelter, warmth, and comfort in the simplest of ways. Imagine a vast snowy valley beneath a pale sky, where twilight lingers for hours and the horizon glows in shades of icy blue. At the edge of the valley rises a wall of rock, and hidden within its folds lies a dark cave. For the first humans who wandered there, this cave was more than stone. It was protection, a womb carved into the earth itself. Inside, the air was still, shielded from the screaming wind outside. Though cold, it was a quiet cold, steady and predictable, unlike the biting gusts that cut across the open land. In those early days, people huddled together to fight the chill. They wrapped themselves in the thick pelts of the animals they had hunted, stretching hides across the ground to soften the hardness of stone. The warmth of one body joined with another, and so entire families, children, parents, elders, slept pressed close like embers gathered into a single flame. In this closeness there was not only heat but also comfort, a shared rhythm of breathing that lulled the mind into rest. But there was something more, something that changed the very essence of winter nights. Fire. At first, it was rare, a stolen flame taken from a lightning-struck tree or smoldering branch. But soon humans learned to coax it, to spark it from stone and tinder. Within the cave, the first flicker of fire bloomed, golden against the gray walls. Its warmth spread, not only into the skin but also into the heart. The crackle of burning wood became a song of safety, a gentle rhythm against the silence of night. The flames did not merely keep out the cold, they kept away the darkness. Shadows danced across the stone, forming shapes that seemed alive. Leaping deer, curling snakes, the outline of hunters. Perhaps these shadows inspired the first dreams, the first stories told by firelight. And as people lay down upon their hides, the fire's glow painted their faces in amber, calming their thoughts, guiding them into sleep. For the first time in the long history of humankind, winter nights were no longer only a battle against the cold. They became something softer, almost sacred. The cave became a chamber of rest, and the fire a guardian spirit watching over the sleepers. Outside, wolves howled into the frozen dark, but inside, the people drifted into dreams, warmed by flame and by one another. It was here, in such caves, that the foundation of human sleep was born. Not the restless slumber of fear, but the deep shared rest of community, of trust that dawn would come and that together they would endure. And so, the story of how cave people found comfort in the cold begins, with stone walls, animal skins, and a single flickering fire that lit the path to dreams. As the winters grew harsher and the nights stretched longer, fire alone was not enough. The flickering flame could warm the air, yes, but it could not touch every shadow, nor shield the body from the stone floor beneath. The cave dwellers began to understand that warmth could be held, trapped, and carried. Their teachers were the very animals they hunted, creatures wrapped in thick coats of fur, who endured the cold as if born from snow itself. When a hunt was successful, the people did not only see meat and bone, they saw shelter. They learned to stretch hides over wooden frames, to dry them with smoke, to soften them by hand until they became supple and warm. These hides were more than coverings. They were like the earth's own blankets, A second skin passed from beast to human, carrying the strength of survival. Picture the cave on a winter's night. A family gathers close, the fire glowing at the center. Around them, hides are layered thick across the ground, muting the chill of stone. Above, heavier skins are hung along the cave walls, creating a barrier against drafts. And when it is time to sleep, they draw the largest pelts over their bodies, tucking them around shoulders and feet. The hides of bears, bison, and deer formed great communal blankets, heavy with warmth. Children nestled into the furs, their small bodies almost disappearing into the folds. Elders leaned against the pile of skins, feeling the softness against their weary bones. The breath of many sleepers mingled, and soon the cave was filled with a steady chorus of quiet snores and sighs. The cold could press outside, but inside, the people lay in their cocoon, as if wrapped within the heart of the animals that had given their lives. The pelts also carried a certain spirit. Many believed that the warmth was not only physical but also sacred, that the soul of the animal lingered in the fur, lending protection through the night. To sleep beneath the skin of a great bear was to borrow its strength, to dream with its courage. To curl inside the fur of a deer was to share in its swiftness and grace. Dreams and survival became entwined. In the silence of the cave, illuminated by fire's soft glow, the people drifted into slumber. Snow drifted across the valley outside, muffling the earth in silence. Icicles grew like crystal teeth at the cave's mouth, but none who slept inside felt their sting. Wrapped in layers of fur, warmed by fire and pressed close to one another, they slept deeply, dreaming of hunts yet to come, of rivers thawing in spring, of skies clear and blue. Thus, night by night, the people learned that comfort in winter was not a luxury, but an art woven from fire, stone, and the gifts of animals. And with each passing season, their knowledge grew, just as the comfort of their sleep grew deeper, steadier, more secure. In the depths of winter, when the icy wind howled through the valleys like a restless spirit, the cave people learned that warmth was strongest when shared. The fire gave heat, the furs held it close, but the final secret was the nearness of bodies, many hearts beating together in a circle of survival. Imagine the scene. The cave dark except for the glow of embers at its heart. The people formed a cluster around it, not scattered but pressed side by side. Parents gathered children into their arms, elders leaned against the shoulders of the strong, and even the hunters, accustomed to silence and distance, softened in these hours of rest. They understood, perhaps without words, that each body carried a spark, and when joined together, these sparks grew into a steady flame. It was in these nights that bonds were woven tighter. The hush of winter turned into a shared rhythm, the rise and fall of many breaths, the warmth of skin against skin, the unspoken promise that no one would be left to face the cold alone. Infants nestled at their mother's chest, lulled by the steady beat of her heart. Children slept pressed between their parents, cocooned in safety. The elders rested with the comfort of knowing that their people's warmth would carry them through another night. The circle was not only for sleep, it was a place for stories. Long before the fire died down, voices would rise in soft tones, recounting tales of mighty hunts, of spirits that lived in the rivers and skies, of ancestors whose courage lit the way. The stories were not merely entertainment, they were like warmth for the mind, weaving comfort into the darkness. Words became blankets, wrapping the listeners in a world where fear melted away, replaced by wonder. Sometimes the stories were whispers of dreams, of summer rivers sparkling, of meadows alive with flowers, of fruit sweet and heavy on the trees. Such visions carried the sleepers beyond the frozen world, as though their minds stepped into seasons of plenty. Even in the heart of winter, they dreamed of warmth, and in those dreams they found rest. The crackle of fire joined the lullaby of breath, and slowly, one by one, they slipped into slumber. The cave grew still, except for the soft sighs of sleep, the occasional rustle of a fur pelt, and the faint whistle of wind beyond the stone walls. Together they became like a single being, many lives woven into one body of warmth, many dreams carried within one circle of safety. This was how they endured the longest nights. Not with fire alone, nor with fur alone, but with the closeness of hearts and the timeless rhythm of shared survival. The cave people had learned that fire was more than a tool. It was a guardian, a companion, a living spirit that needed care. They knew it must never be allowed to die, for a dead fire meant cold, darkness, and danger. And so, through countless winters, they developed rituals of tending the flame, treating it as though it were a member of their family. When the sun set and shadows swallowed the valley, one or two chosen keepers would sit close to the fire's glow. Their task was not only practical but sacred. They whispered to the flame, fed it branches, coaxed it back to life when it flickered low. The youngest children would watch with wide eyes, learning how to cradle a glowing ember in dry moss, how to breathe gently until it burst into light, how to honor the fire as though it were a spirit that gave them life. The fire gave them more than warmth. It offered protection. Beyond the cave mouth, winter was not the only danger. Wolves prowled in search of prey, and shadows hid unseen threats. Yet the glow of fire sent a warning into the dark. Here lives strength. Here lives vigilance. The predators kept their distance, sensing both the flame and the tribe's presence. In the crackle of burning wood, the people felt secure, wrapped not only in heat but in safety. Night after night, the flame became the heart of the cave. Around it, families gathered in a circle, pressing close under their heavy furs. The firelight painted their faces in warm colors, shadows flickering across the stone walls as though the ancestors themselves were dancing there. Elders would trace shapes on the walls with smoke-blackened fingers, telling stories of the first fire, the first warmth stolen from the sky or gifted by lightning. The children listened as if the sparks themselves were stars brought down to earth, each ember a tiny world of light and promise. When sleep finally drew near, the fire's rhythm became their lullaby. The steady crackle echoed like the beating of a drum, slow and soothing, as though the earth itself were breathing beside them. They drifted into dreams where flames became guardians, walking with them through snowy forests, protecting them from the biting cold. In those dreams, the fire was alive, a creature of warmth with eyes of glowing embers and a voice that whispered, "Rest, I will watch over you." But fire was fragile, and so each night had its watchers. One would wake before the other stirred, lifting a glowing stick, nudging the coals, feeding the flame. These small acts of care kept the cold at bay. And in that rhythm, feeding, watching, resting, the people discovered something deeper. Survival was not just about enduring the cold, but about tending to what gave life with patience and reverence. Outside, the blizzards could roar, snow could bury the valley, and the winds could scream against the cliffs. But inside, the fire glowed steady. It was as though the cave had its own sun, a secret warmth that no winter could conquer. And as long as the guardians of the flame tended it faithfully, the people knew they would see spring again. As the long winter pressed down upon the land, silence often crept into the cave like another shadow. Outside, the world was hushed under snow. No birds called, no rivers ran free, no leaves rustled in the wind. It was a silence so deep that it could weigh upon the heart. And so, the people found a way to fill it, with song. These were not songs as we know them now, with words carefully chosen and melodies written in lines. They were simpler, more primal, sounds that rose from the chest and lingered in the air like smoke. Sometimes they were low hums, steady and deep, like the earth groaning beneath the frost. Other times they were high, drifting notes, like the cry of wind across the cliffs. The voices rose and fell, weaving together until they became something greater than the sum of their parts. Picture it, a circle of people, gathered close around the fire. The flames flicker, casting golden light across fur-clad shoulders. One voice begins, slow and steady, a sound almost like a heartbeat. Another joins, weaving around the first. Then another, until the cave fills with a chorus, haunting, beautiful, and timeless. The sound does not speak in words, but it carries meaning. We are alive. We are together. The cold cannot take us. For the children, these songs were lullabies. Their small eyes would grow heavy as the voices wrapped around them like blankets. They would sink into the warmth of their parents' arms, the rhythm of the songs blending with the rhythm of the fire's crackle. To them, the voices of their people became the sound of safety, the music of survival. For the elders, the songs were memories. Each note carried echoes of winters past, of their parents' voices now gone, of hunts long finished, of struggles endured and overcome. When they sang, they felt the presence of those who came before, as though the ancestors were singing with them, their voices hidden in the shadows, rising with the smoke. Sometimes the songs shifted, becoming stories carried by sound. A hunter would mimic the cry of a wolf, a mother the call of a bird in summer, a child the babble of a thawing brook. These sounds became a tapestry of life beyond the frozen world, reminders that winter was not forever. Even in the darkest night, the people could sing themselves into spring. And when the songs faded, they left behind a silence that was not empty but full, a silence that carried warmth, the echo of voices still lingering in the stone walls. Slowly, the singers would drift into sleep, their dreams colored by the music. In those dreams, they walked in meadows, they hunted under bright skies, they danced in the light of a sun that never set. Thus, music became another fire, an invisible flame that burned inside the people. It could not melt snow or drive away wolves, but it gave strength, comfort, and hope. And in the depths of winter, hope was as necessary as warmth itself. As the winter stretched on, the cave itself became more than shelter. It became a dream chamber, a womb of stone where sleep was transformed into something sacred. The people learned that their nights were not only for rest but also for visions, for journeys taken with closed eyes while their bodies remained nestled in furs. The cave had its own music, soft and unending. The crackle of the fire, the sigh of breath, the drip of water echoing from hidden chambers deep within. These sounds lulled the sleepers into slumber, carrying them gently across the threshold of wakefulness. And once the darkness of sleep enveloped them, the mind awoke in another world. In dreams, the cold could not reach them. The harsh wind became a gentle breeze that carried the scent of flowers. The frozen rivers transformed into silver streams tumbling with fish. They wandered meadows that stretched farther than the horizon, where the sun lingered forever in golden light. The children ran through fields of tall grass, laughing as they chased shadows of deer, while the elders walked beneath great trees, their hands brushing against leaves that glowed like emeralds. But their dreams were not only of beauty. Sometimes the spirits of animals appeared, guides cloaked in fur and feather. A hunter might dream of a wolf pacing beside him, its amber eyes gleaming with secrets. A mother might see a great bird soaring above, its wings wide enough to shield her children from harm. To dream of such beings was considered a gift, a promise of strength, courage, and wisdom carried into waking life. The fire itself became a presence in dreams. Many spoke of flames rising like dancers, weaving patterns in the night sky, or of embers turning into stars that guided them across vast landscapes. The dream fire whispered of survival, of endurance, of the cycle of seasons that always brought spring. To dream of fire was to dream of hope. And sometimes, the cave walls themselves seemed alive in slumber. Sleepers saw the stone soften, revealing ancient shapes. Hands pressed into rock, animals running in endless hunts, spirals that led into hidden realms. These visions, though fleeting, planted seeds of inspiration. When the dreamers awoke, they remembered what they had seen, and slowly, over generations, they began to paint those shapes upon the walls, leaving behind whispers of their dreams for future eyes to see. Sleep, then, was not only survival. It was communion with the earth, with the animals, with the ancestors, with the unseen forces that lived beyond the veil of night. Each morning, as the people stirred and stretched beneath their heavy skins, they carried more than rest with them. They carried fragments of a dream world stitched into their souls, fragments that shaped how they hunted, how they sang, how they survived. Thus the cave was more than stone. It was a cradle for their bodies and a doorway for their spirits. And as long as the fire burned, as long as they huddled close beneath their furs, the people dreamed, not just of surviving the winter, but of a life larger than the snow and shadows around them. Even in the warmth of fire and furs, the nights were long, and the cave people understood that vigilance was as vital as rest. Outside, the frozen land could be merciless. Wolves prowled the edges of the forest, and unseen creatures rustled beneath snow-laden branches. But inside, the cave held its own rhythm of guardianship, a quiet, unspoken watch that kept danger at bay while others slept. In each cave, certain individuals took on the role of night watchers. They did not merely sit beside the fire. They became extensions of it, their eyes scanning the cave mouth, their senses attuned to every whisper of wind or shift of stone. They listened for the crunch of distant footsteps, for the faint scrape of claws against ice. Yet they moved with the gentleness of shadows, careful not to disturb those who had already succumbed to sleep. The watchers learned to be patient, almost as though time moved differently at night. One could sit for hours, barely breathing, feeling the pulse of the fire and the subtle warmth of the sleeping bodies around them. They carried no weapons except the awareness that their presence alone could deter the curious predators of the dark. Often they hummed soft tones, low and steady, not to rouse the sleepers, but to weave a thread of sound through the cave, blending with the crackle of fire and the breathing of kin, a lullaby of safety. Children sensed the watchers' care even before they fully understood it. They slept with a quiet comfort, the assurance that someone was near, ready to protect. Dreams flowed more freely under such vigilance. The mind could wander to distant fields, to rivers unbound by ice, to skies painted with stars too brilliant to count. Each dream carried a sense of security, rooted in the knowledge that, beyond the firelight, someone remained awake, guarding life and warmth. Sometimes, in the depth of night, the watchers shared whispered stories with each other, not for the children or elders, but for themselves, a way to keep the solitude of duty gentle. Tales of hunts long past, of ancestors who had tamed the wild, of lessons learned from wolves and birds, all floated through the cold air like drifting snowflakes. These whispered words became a secret language, an invisible thread connecting one human heart to another across the darkness. And as the first faint hints of dawn touched the horizon, the night watchers allowed themselves a final glance at the cave, at the fire that had survived another long night, at the sleeping forms huddled beneath skins. Relief and contentment filled them, and only then did they allow their own eyes to close. They, too, slipped into dreams, carrying the weight of their responsibility gently upon their shoulders, knowing that the cave had survived another night. In this way, survival was not just about warmth or fire. It was about care, attention, and the unspoken bond of community. The Watchers of the Night ensured that the circle of life continued unbroken, that the warmth of the fire and the comfort of the furs remained a sanctuary against the frozen world outside. Outside the cave, winter had transformed the world into a realm of silver and white. Snow blanketed the hills, and the wind swept through valleys with a voice both fierce and mesmerizing. It whispered secrets in a language only nature spoke, a song of frost and endurance. Inside, the cave offered refuge, but the people still felt the presence of the winter beyond, and they had learned to listen to it with quiet awe. The wind was not merely a threat, it was a storyteller. As it moaned around the cliffs, it carried tales from distant lands, of frozen rivers, ice-laden trees, and forests weighed down with snow. The cave people, wrapped in their furs and gathered near the fire, would imagine these places as the wind passed. They envisioned the herds of bison trudging through deep snow, the swift-footed deer leaping gracefully between drifts, and the predatory eyes of wolves glinting in the moonlight. In their imagination, the wind painted vivid pictures that awakened the senses even as their bodies prepared for rest. Inside the cave, the elders would mimic the sounds of the wind, blending them with low hums or soft chants. The children listened wide-eyed, as the cave transformed into a world of sound. The gusts became a symphony, each note carrying meaning, the howl of survival, the sigh of the earth, the promise that spring would come. These sounds calmed the hearts of the young and reminded the adults of the delicate balance between vulnerability and resilience. As the fire flickered, casting shadows on the walls, the people would layer their hides and snuggle close, allowing the wind's whispers to drift around them without touching. They had learned the art of coexistence, understanding that the elements outside were powerful, yet powerless against the unity within. Each breath shared among them, each heartbeat synchronized in the circle, became a shield stronger than stone or fur alone. Sometimes the wind carried more than stories. It brought scents from faraway places, the tang of pine, the hint of distant rivers, the subtle musk of animals traveling in packs. These fragrances mingled with the smoke from the fire and the earthy scent of furs, creating a perfume unique to winter nights inside the cave. To inhale was to remember, to feel connected to the vast world beyond the stone walls, even while remaining sheltered and warm. In this interplay of sound, scent, and warmth, the cave became more than a shelter. It became a sanctuary for the imagination, a place where minds could wander safely into realms both real and imagined. Dreams grew richer, infused with the whispers of the wind and the protective embrace of fire and fur. Children slept peacefully, elders drifted into reflective rest, and even the watchers felt the lull of the night, comforted by the harmony of the cave and the world outside. Thus, the cave people thrived, not by resisting the wind, but by listening to it, learning from it, and carrying its stories into their dreams. Winter was still harsh, the night still long, but inside the cave, life, warmth, and wonder endured. Outside the cave, winter had transformed the world into a realm of silver and white. Snow blanketed the hills, and the wind swept through valleys with a voice both fierce and mesmerizing. It whispered secrets in a language only nature spoke, a song of frost and endurance. Inside, the cave offered refuge, but the people still felt the presence of the winter beyond, and they had learned to listen to it with quiet awe. The wind was not merely a threat, it was a storyteller. As it moaned around the cliffs, it carried tales from distant lands, of frozen rivers, ice-laden trees, and forests weighed down with snow. The cave people, wrapped in their furs and gathered near the fire, would imagine these places as the wind passed. They envisioned the herds of bison trudging through deep snow, the swift-footed deer leaping gracefully between drifts, and the predatory eyes of wolves glinting in the moonlight. In their imagination, the wind painted vivid pictures that awakened the senses even as their bodies prepared for rest. Inside the cave, the elders would mimic the sounds of the wind, blending them with low hums or soft chants. The children listened wide-eyed, as the cave transformed into a world of sound. The gusts became a symphony, each note carrying meaning, the howl of survival, the sigh of the earth, the promise that spring would come. These sounds calmed the hearts of the young and reminded the adults of the delicate balance between vulnerability and resilience. As the fire flickered, casting shadows on the walls, the people would layer their hides and snuggle close, allowing the wind's whispers to drift around them without touching. They had learned the art of coexistence, understanding that the elements outside were powerful, yet powerless against the unity within. Each breath shared among them, each heartbeat synchronized in the circle, became a shield stronger than stone or fur alone. Sometimes the wind carried more than stories. It brought scents from faraway places, the tang of pine, the hint of distant rivers, the subtle musk of animals traveling in packs. These fragrances mingled with the smoke from the fire and the earthy scent of furs, creating a perfume unique to winter nights inside the cave. To inhale was to remember, to feel connected to the vast world beyond the stone walls, even while remaining sheltered and warm. In this interplay of sound, scent, and warmth, the cave became more than a shelter. It became a sanctuary for the imagination, a place where minds could wander safely into realms both real and imagined. Dreams grew richer, infused with the whispers of the wind and the protective embrace of fire and fur. Children slept peacefully, elders drifted into reflective rest, and even the watchers felt the lull of the night, comforted by the harmony of the cave and the world outside. Thus, the cave people thrived, not by resisting the wind, but by listening to it, learning from it, and carrying its stories into their dreams. Winter was still harsh, the night still long, but inside the cave, life, warmth, and wonder endured. Beyond the mouth of the cave, the frozen river lay like a silver ribbon stretching into the horizon. In winter, it was silent and unyielding, a mirror reflecting the pale light of the sun and moon. Yet the cave people had learned to see more than ice. They saw potential, sustenance, and even comfort hidden within the frozen expanse. During the day, hunters would venture carefully across the river, feeling the thickness of the ice beneath their feet. Sometimes, the river offered fish trapped beneath its glassy surface, their bodies preserved in the cold, waiting to nourish the people. At other times, it provided clear paths for travel or hunting, creating routes unseen in the deep snow of the surrounding forests. Even in its silence, the river spoke, teaching patience and respect for the power of nature. Inside the cave, the river's presence was felt even in dreams. As the children drifted into slumber under their layers of fur, Their imaginations carried them to the shimmering ice. They would imagine sliding across its surface, laughing as they chased one another, or sitting by the riverbank as the sun painted diamonds on the frozen surface. In their minds, the frozen river became a playground of light and motion, a magical place where the harshness of winter softened into wonder. The elders often told stories about the river, weaving lessons of survival into fables. They spoke of creatures who had adapted to the cold, of cunning hunts, and of the quiet strategies that allowed life to endure. Each tale carried wisdom: respect the land, honor the river, and trust in your own instincts. These stories were sung or whispered by the fire, merging with the crackle of flames and the gentle hum of the wind, creating a lullaby that eased even the weariest into peaceful sleep. At night, the river also inspired dreams of movement and transformation. The ice might melt in their minds, giving way to rushing water, reflecting lush greenery, bright skies, and summer warmth. These visions reminded the cave people that winter, though long and biting, was temporary. Every cold night carried the promise of spring, and every dream was a bridge between endurance and hope. And so, the frozen river became more than a natural feature. It became a symbol. It represented resilience, patience, and the hidden gifts of the cold. In the quiet hours of the night, as families huddled around the fire, the river's presence flowed into their consciousness, shaping their dreams and their understanding of the world. It taught them that even in the harshest conditions, there was beauty, sustenance, and comfort for those who could perceive it. By listening to the lessons of ice and water, by observing patience and grace, the cave people learned to embrace winter not merely as a season of survival, but as a teacher, a companion, and a muse for the heart and mind. Even as the nights grew longer and colder, the cave held a rhythm, a pulse born from the movement of its inhabitants. Each step, each shuffle of fur across stone, became a part of a pattern, an echo that connected past, present, and future. The cave people learned to move softly, respecting the silence of the stone and the slumbering bodies around them. Yet even in their careful motions, life thrummed through the dark. The hunters, returning from the frozen forest or distant slopes, carried stories in their footsteps. Each tread was a narrative of pursuit and survival, of careful observation, of the delicate dance with prey. Inside the cave, their soft footfalls told tales even before words were spoken, an announcement of success, of lessons learned, or of discoveries made in the wilderness beyond the walls. The children, nestled in fur, felt these echoes as gentle vibrations through the cave floor. Even in sleep, their minds absorbed the rhythm, learning the language of movement. Dreams took them to the forest trails over ice and snow, where they ran with silent feet, stalking imaginary herds or exploring hidden valleys. The echoes became a lullaby, a subtle reminder of the world outside, of adventure and discovery awaiting beyond the frozen stone. Elders often mused that footsteps were like invisible threads, linking the generations. The prints of the day, pressed in snow or mud, would guide others. Inside, the movement of each person carried intention and care, teaching the young to tread softly, to watch, to listen, and to honor the earth that bore them. Each echo reinforced the sense of community, of shared vigilance, and of connection to the larger rhythm of life. At night, as the wind whistled and snow pressed against the cave mouth, the footsteps became even more meaningful. They reminded the sleepers that life continued beyond the shelter, that survival required motion and mindfulness. Even the softest shuffle near the fire could carry reassurance, a sign that kin were awake, aware, and ready to act if danger approached. These subtle sounds became part of the night's lullaby, blending with the fire's crackle, the whispers of the wind, and the murmur of dreams. In their sleep, the cave dwellers imagined walking endless trails, following unseen paths carved by the ancestors' feet. Each step in their dreams was imbued with the knowledge of those who had gone before, the strategies of the hunt, the stories of courage, and the quiet wisdom of enduring the cold. Footsteps became a bridge between worlds, a rhythm that carried the living and the dreaming together, inseparable in their journey through winter. Thus, even in the deepest darkness, the cave pulsed with life. Every echo of a footstep, every soft movement, every gentle shift in the circle of warmth reinforced the strength of their community, the security of their shelter, and the continuity of existence. Night after night, they slept enveloped in warmth, guided by the music of living and moving together. The cave was more than a shelter. It was a realm where the mind wandered freely, where dreams were nurtured as carefully as the fire itself. The elders often whispered that the night carried spirits, gentle guides who watched over the sleepers and taught them lessons while they rested. And so, the people became guardians of dreams, ensuring that each child, each elder, each hunter could journey safely through the world of sleep. They learned subtle rituals to invite pleasant visions and ward off restless shadows. Before closing their eyes, families would hum softly, layering voices like gentle threads across the cave. The fire's warmth and the steady rhythm of breaths created an invisible cocoon, guiding the mind into gentle slumber. Infants nestled close to their mothers, their tiny hands brushing against furs, feeling the pulse of protection and love. Dreams, the elders said, were mirrors of the world, teaching courage, patience, and creativity. A young hunter might dream of tracking a deer across sparkling meadows, learning the patience required for the hunt. A mother might dream of a river flowing with fish, reminding her of sustenance and care. Each vision carried a lesson encoded in wonder and imagination. Even the animals had their place in dreams. Wolves with amber eyes, birds with wings like sunlight, and even the silent deer of the forest appeared to guide, teach, and comfort. The cave people often awoke with the memory of these guides, carrying insights from their nocturnal teachers into the waking world. These lessons were subtle yet powerful, shaping every movement, every choice, and every story told around the fire. Sometimes dreams merged with the firelight. The embers seemed to dance with life, forming shapes that reflected the imagination of the sleepers. A flickering glow became a fox darting across the snow, a rising spark became a bird taking flight, and shadows stretched into the shapes of ancient ancestors. These visions were considered gifts, reminders that life was continuous and that the night offered both rest and guidance. As the moon traced its path across the sky, the cave became a sanctuary of learning and slumber. The guardians, whether awake or asleep themselves, ensured that the circle of warmth remained unbroken, that the fire burned steady, and that each dreamer could traverse the world of night safely. In this way, survival intertwined with imagination, creating a tapestry of life, wisdom, and wonder that would endure through even the harshest winters. By morning, the cave inhabitants would awaken not just rested but enriched, carrying the soft glow of dreams into the day. Each step outside, each careful action, was guided by visions born in the silent hours, ensuring that knowledge, courage, and community were woven into every movement. As the night stretched longer, the cave people gathered closer around the fire, allowing its warmth to weave stories through their hearts. The elders became storytellers, not merely recounting events, but shaping tales that merged memory, imagination, and survival. Each story was a thread connecting generations, a song of endurance sung in the flickering glow of flames. These fireside legends often began with creatures of the wild, wolves that taught cunning, bears that embodied strength, or birds whose songs carried messages from distant lands. But the stories never ended with danger. They always offered guidance. Hunters learned patience, children learned bravery, and the community learned how to live in harmony with the world beyond the cave. The cave walls themselves became canvases for these tales. Shadows danced across stone as flames leapt and crackled, painting ephemeral images of hunts, journeys, and heroic deeds. The children watched intently, their eyes reflecting the firelight, their minds absorbing lessons in courage, patience, and respect for life. Each flicker of flame was a moving illustration, transforming the cave into a living storybook. Even the simplest actions gained meaning when woven into stories. The act of tending the fire became a ritual of devotion, a reminder that warmth and light were precious. Preparing furs for sleep became a tale of care and foresight, and sharing the day's meal became a lesson in gratitude and community. These legends intertwined with daily life, ensuring that survival was not merely physical but moral and cultural as well. Sometimes the stories would turn fantastical, blending reality with imagination. Children drifted to sleep imagining themselves as brave hunters, mystical animals, or explorers of hidden valleys. These dreams carried lessons, reinforcing the values and knowledge passed down through generations. In this way, storytelling became both entertainment and education, shaping not only the mind but the spirit. Through fireside legends, the cave people discovered the power of narrative. They understood that stories were more than words. They were vessels of wisdom, tools for survival, and sources of comfort. In the long winter nights, as snow piled outside and the wind howled across the frozen land, the fire burned steadily, carrying the light of knowledge, imagination, and hope. As the embers glowed softly and the cave sank into quiet, the children slept soundly, the adults dreamed, and the stories lingered in the air like a protective spell. Each night, each tale, strengthened the bonds of the community, creating a shared memory that would endure long after the winter passed, guiding them into spring and the countless seasons beyond. Beyond the cave, the forest lay cloaked in frost, its branches heavy with snow and ice. The trees creaked and groaned as the wind whispered through them, telling tales of winters past and seasons yet to come. The cave people often imagined the forest as a living entity, watching over them and guiding their movements with subtle cues from the shifting snow. During the day, hunters ventured carefully among the frost-laden trees, learning to read the land's language. Each footprint in the snow, each snapped branch, each frozen droplet became a lesson in observation and patience. They moved silently, their steps measured and deliberate, their eyes sharp for the glint of distant prey. And at night, these observations transformed into stories and dreams, carried gently into sleep by the warmth of the fire. Children, snug in their layers of furs, imagined the forest in their dreams as a magical realm. Snowflakes turned into shimmering creatures that danced in the air, and frozen streams became crystal paths leading to hidden worlds. Wolves, deer, and birds appeared not as threats but as companions and guides, teaching the young ones the ways of the wilderness through the language of imagination. The elders spoke of the forest's hidden wisdom. They told how every tree, every stone, every icy brook held knowledge of survival. A snapped branch could warn of predators, a pattern in the snow could indicate the path of prey, and the subtle scent of pine could signal the approach of warmer winds. These teachings were essential, carried from generation to generation, and reinforced through song, story, and dream. At night, the forest became a place of reflection. The wind's soft moan through the trees mirrored the sighs of the cave dwellers, intertwining their lives with the rhythm of the wild. Dreams and reality merged as the frost-laden woods entered their minds, bringing lessons of resilience, observation, and harmony. Every dream of the forest strengthened their instincts and deepened their connection to the land. Even in the harshest cold, the forest offered beauty and comfort. Sunlight refracted through icy branches, creating a glittering canopy that inspired awe. The sounds of distant animals, the shimmer of frozen rivers, and the hush of snow falling from high limbs reminded the cave dwellers that life persisted, even in adversity. And as they slept, wrapped in warmth, they carried these visions, lessons, and wonders into the world of dreams, ensuring that both survival and imagination flourished side by side. As the nights deepened, the moon rose high and cast its silvery light across the snow-covered land. Ice sparkled like countless diamonds, and the cave people would watch in quiet wonder, feeling the glow reach even into the depths of their shelter. Moonlight became a companion, a gentle presence that guided them through darkness and lent a magical quality to the frozen world outside. The hunters observed the moon's reflection on the icy surfaces, using its glow to navigate paths invisible during the day. Footprints, faint tracks of animals, and the contours of the frozen land were revealed in soft silver light, teaching them subtle lessons in observation and patience. Even the smallest shimmer could indicate movement or hint at the presence of life beyond the cave. Children, curled up under layers of furs, imagined the moonlight as a magical lantern, illuminating secret pathways and hidden realms. Wolves with gleaming eyes, birds with silver feathers, and deer that glided across frozen fields appeared in dreams, moving gracefully beneath the luminous sky. The moon's glow inspired stories of wonder, bravery, and adventure, bridging the gap between waking life and imagination. Elders spoke of the moon as a guide for the heart. They explained how its consistent presence through countless nights represented resilience, a reminder that cycles of hardship and rest were part of life. The moonlight became a symbol of continuity, connecting the cave dwellers to the greater rhythms of nature, to the unseen forces that governed the land, and to the dreams that nurtured their spirits. At night, the cave itself seemed to absorb some of this celestial glow. Shadows danced in gentle patterns upon the stone walls, creating living images that accompanied the soft crackle of the fire. Stories and songs merged with these reflections, blending reality and imagination. Each flicker of fire and moonlight became a lesson in harmony, teaching the young to appreciate beauty while learning caution and awareness. Moonlight also encouraged reflection. The cave dwellers, even as they drifted into sleep, would think of journeys taken, lessons learned, and mysteries yet to explore. Dreams carried them over frozen rivers, through sparkling forests, and across endless fields, all bathed in silver light. These nocturnal voyages strengthened their minds and spirits, preparing them to face the frozen world with courage, wisdom, and wonder. Thus, moonlight was more than illumination. It was a teacher, a storyteller, and a companion. It touched every aspect of life, from the smallest child to the eldest hunter, shaping dreams, guiding steps, and filling the long winter nights with serenity, magic, and hope. Inside the cave, the fire continued its quiet, steadfast presence. Its warm glow intertwined with the soft murmur of sleeping bodies, forming a cocoon of comfort that insulated the cave people from the bitter cold outside. Each spark, each flicker seemed alive, carrying stories of survival, whispers of dreams, and the gentle rhythm of life sustained through generations. Families gathered close, sharing the warmth, and the subtle scent of smoke mingled with animal fur. The firelight cast dancing shadows upon the stone walls, which were etched with the marks of ancestors, handprints, spirals, and depictions of animals once hunted in distant valleys. These shadows became living companions, teaching the young ones to respect the past even as they embraced the present. The elders hummed songs that blended with the fire's crackle, melodies passed down through countless winters. These tunes were gentle yet powerful, weaving patience, courage, and wisdom into the hearts of listeners. Children, nestled under layers of furs, drifted into sleep while the rhythm of these melodies guided their dreams. They imagined themselves running through snowy fields, exploring forests where light danced on ice-laden branches, and communicating with animals that walked silently beside them. Even the act of tending the fire became sacred. Shifting logs, adding small branches, or stirring embers were movements filled with intention. Each action carried respect for warmth, nourishment, and life itself. The cave dwellers understood that fire was more than a tool. It was a guardian, a storyteller, and a bridge between waking and dreaming. At night, the cave pulsed with harmony. Each breath, each heartbeat, each sigh of contentment contributed to a collective rhythm. The young learned to synchronize with this flow, discovering the subtle art of listening to others and the environment. Dreams were enriched by this harmony, filled with images of unity, cooperation, and the enduring strength of the community. Even as the wind moaned outside and snow pressed against the cave mouth, the people slept undisturbed, carried by the gentle cadence of hearthside life. They dreamed of adventures in distant valleys, of encounters with creatures both real and imagined, and of the quiet power of surviving together. Every dream was infused with warmth, safety, and hope, ensuring that the spirit remained unbroken despite the harsh winter. Through hearthside harmony, the cave people learned that survival was more than enduring cold. It was about nurturing connection, imagination, and wisdom. The fire illuminated not only their nights but their hearts, leaving each dreamer prepared to face both the challenges and the wonders of the frozen world outside. As the long winter finally loosened its grip, subtle changes whispered through the frozen landscape. Snow began to soften, streams murmured once more beneath thin sheets of ice, and the wind carried a gentler, warmer note. Inside the cave, the people felt this shift not just in the cold that eased at the entrance, but in their dreams, their songs, and their hearts. The children awoke with brighter eyes, sensing that the world outside had changed. They imagined green buds peeking from beneath the melting snow, streams flowing clear and bright, and animals returning to the forests after long months of scarcity. Their dreams carried the promise of adventure renewed, and their laughter mingled with the hum of the fire, now less about survival and more about celebration. The elders observed quietly, noting the patterns of nature that had always guided them. They explained to the young that winter, with all its hardship, had been a teacher, a period of patience, unity, and endurance. Now, as the first signs of spring appeared, the lessons remained embedded in every step, every breath, and every heartbeat. They spoke softly of the rhythm of life, of the eternal cycle that balanced cold and warmth, night and day, rest and activity. Hunters prepared to venture further, guided by instincts honed over months of observation and the wisdom gleaned from dreams. They followed the traces of returning herds, explored thawing streams, and listened to the chorus of birds heralding the new season. Each journey carried confidence, patience, and knowledge, cultivated through countless nights spent within the protective warmth of the cave. Even at night, the cave held its magic. The fire continued to crackle, the firs offered comfort, and dreams carried the children and adults alike into realms of imagination. Yet these dreams were now infused with hope, with anticipation of renewal. They envisioned lush valleys, playful rivers, and skies bright with sunlight, a world transformed from the harsh monochrome of winter to the vibrant hues of life awakening. As dawn broke one morning, spilling soft golden light across the landscape, the cave dwellers emerged into a world both familiar and reborn. They walked together side by side, feeling the sun's gentle warmth on their faces and the renewed earth beneath their feet. Every hardship of winter had forged strength, wisdom, and unity. The frozen nights, the vigilant watches, the whispered stories, and the dreams nurtured by firelight had prepared them to embrace the promise of spring fully. And so, the cycle continued. The cave, the fires, the land, and the people existed in harmony, a testament to endurance, imagination, and the quiet beauty of life in rhythm with nature. From the depths of winter to the dawn of spring, the story of the cave people echoed timelessly, a lullaby of survival, warmth, and wonder that could be felt in every dream, every heartbeat, and every breath of the living world.